Man, I'm super excited today. We have an incredible guest with us. Someone who is a well-respected author and thought leader in the automotive space. He wrote the book, Driving Sales, What It Takes to Sell 1,000 Cars. Someone that has transformed dealers from 130 units to 1,000 units a month in the driver's seat, helping that dealership to transform. Somebody that has spent their career in retail, who's also a software executive and is currently really the head of operations or the platform director of sales and marketing for the Jackie Cooper Auto Group. So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome the one and only Chris Martinez to the lot. Welcome to the lot, man. How are you?
Man, thank you for having me. You know, it's funny because every time I text you now, because when you shared your contact, it says Papa Joe.
Yeah.
And so now I just want to call you Papa Joe all the time now.
It's Siri's nickname for me. So I can be like, Siri, what's my name? And she's like, your name is Joe, but you asked me to call you Papa Joe. And it makes me grin.
It's funny, man.
So anybody out there that has my actual contact info, it will tell you my nickname is Papa Joe. So, hey, Chris, glad to have you. We're going to get into some awesome conversations. Welcome to the lot. Welcome to the lot. Real people who took real ups. With almost 2 million people employed by the automotive retail car business, there's a good chance that someone successful got their start selling cars. These are their stories. Welcome to the lot. Sponsored by AutoFi. All right, I'm super excited to have this conversation. And the whole point of this podcast is not like hype about what's happening in the car business. It's about the ability for this business to transform people's lives. My story is my mom was a single mom who was a service writer at a Chevy store. It's where she met my dad, who was a finance manager. I think you've seen that story before. They fell in love. And the cool thing is it's like 35 years later and they're still married. And there's actually, it's super cute. My dad found my mom a front license plate on eBay from the store that they worked at. And it's hanging over and like above the door to their house. And so I if there's something I'm passionate about, it's about the automotive business giving an opportunity to people that is really transformative for them. And what this podcast is about is how this career can lead in tons of different directions. And what I'm really excited about for you is you have a really blazed a trail through retail that started in kind of a non-traditional retail way, right? I mean, you started selling cars, but you didn't start at a, franchise Chevy dealership. You started at CarMax. So
no.
I want to hear your story. How did you end up in the car business?
What's funny is I have a twin brother, and I had just moved back. I was living in El Paso, Texas, and I just moved back to Las Vegas because I said, you know what, I'm going to go make money with my uncle. I'm going to do construction. And that's the path I'm going to go. I had just finally made a decision. I was tired of, hanging out with the wrong people. Well, not the wrong people, just doing the wrong things in El Paso. And I was 22 years old, and I went to Las Vegas, and my twin brother at the time, he was living there prior to me arriving. He said, Chris, you know what? Before you go that path, why don't you go to this new place? It's called CarMax. I don't know what it is. But they tried recruiting me. Why don't you just go check it out? And so I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the lip balm, right? They didn't have one when I was there. So I had to meet them at a hotel. And I went to the hotel and I told them, hey, you know what? You guys were trying to recruit my brother and I'm coming in his place, just want to see what this is about. And that was kind of it. It was funny. They just started laughing and they pulled me aside and started going through my background. And they basically said, would you be interested in being a buyer? And I said, I'd really like to look at sales, because once they kind of told me what it was. And then that was it. They flew me to Sacramento, and I was there for a couple months doing training. And did you have any previous sales experience? No sales experience.
What were you doing beforehand?
I was doing telemarketing. So
I love our pre-car business. You're like, I was waiting tables. Or I was doing telemarketing. They're not like.
Well, it was not traditional telemarketing. It was inbound customer service. Yeah. So it was basically for Fortune, some companies that don't want to handle customer service themselves. They outsource it, believe it or not. McDonald's, Xerox. I don't know if it was Xerox. There's a bunch of different companies that they outsource their actual.
So like people would call the complaint line and they would get you?
They'd get me.
Awesome.
But I was in charge of like the email handling, letter handling responses. So when people would email those people, it would be someone like me just, hey, responding to them with some canned.
Like dropping down your template and then like add your own little spin. So I bet like, I bet that's actually a really good preparation, right? Because
I hated it. I didn't like English in high school, right? I just was one of my strong suits. I didn't like really writing a lot. And then once I got into that, I was like, man, I was forced to, I have to like really know how to write well and speak to some of these customers so that I don't make the company look bad that hired us.
Yeah,
you know?
I think throughout like my own career and people I've known, we have these moments in careers where, especially early on, where you don't necessarily like what you're doing, right? Like it's challenging you in ways that you're not happy about. And I think about how much it teaches us, not just the like grit and fortitude to gut it out and just do the job, but also like little bits of skills that over time gave us these kind of like these places to jump off from, or these things that like when you got into another place, you didn't realize that little piece was important. But now I'm talking to customers and I need those customers to want to buy from me. And that little bit of like typing emails that were effective had to help out, right?
Oh, for sure. So once I started their internet program at CarMax, we were doing the email and trying to get customers to come in and buy from you. It was just, I got to create a volley and try to get these customers in. And
so I want to even rewind. So you're at this hotel, you get CarMax's recruiting. They're kind of giggling like, all right, yeah, you can come sit, like you can come do this. We just need people. They're putting their pieces in place. They're not that they just need people, but they're trying to build a team and it's a new concept. Walk me through kind of their onboarding process with you and how they got you ready for that job.
It's next level, right? And this was 2002. Mm-hmm. The beginning of 2003. Yeah. So it was January 2003, and I was still 22, and they interview you by like 3 different managers had to interview you. And then once they get you on board, they flew me to Sacramento, and there's intense training. Like you really had to go through every step of the sale. They were really process oriented, and so they wouldn't let you really get on the floor until you passed their whole training. Yeah. And I remember the first week, I was like, I read their little book, and I was like, man, I think I can do it now. Let's go. And they're like, well, you gotta shadow somebody. You gotta do this. You gotta do. I mean, it was real. I mean, nowadays. And then what's funny is once I left CarMax to go sell at a Toyota dealership, I just jumped in and they just said, here's your login and there you go. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. But
it's the old, here's the keys, here's the cars, go knock yourself out. Yeah. So you go through this onboarding process, never sold cars in your life. You'd handled heat, which I think it preps you very well for the car business. And you get to this CarMax. Where was the CarMax at?
This was in Las Vegas.
Okay, so you get to this CarMax. In my head, I think this giant CarMax in Las Vegas.
It was big. It was their first one in Las Vegas, and it was in Henderson, Nevada.
Yeah.
And day one, I was, they hired a bunch of salespeople, thought it was going to sell X amount of cars, didn't sell as many as they thought they were going to. Mm-hmm. I luckily was one of their top guys at the time, and I sold their first car out of that store.
You sold the first car at the store? Was that a big moment?
It was a big moment for me because what was funny about it was they had they were doing their pep rally in the morning, trying to kick us off. We're about to open up the doors, and I'm looking outside as the general manager speaking, and I see some guy just standing outside looking to see how to get inside. So then I see him walk around to the back side of the lot, because that's where there's a gate, or you have to go jump over the gate to get in. And so he does, and I look at my other sales manager and I go, hey, can I go talk to that guy real quick before, he goes, yeah, go. So I go over there, and the guy's on the phone for like what felt like forever.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there. He's just standing there looking at some cars, but he's just standing there on the phone, and I just wait. And sure enough, I ended up selling him a car, his wife a car, his daughter a car. I mean, it was...
it's the best. So When you're opening this CarMax, right? You're on the sales floor. The sales managers, the GM, had they all come out of retail, or were they like
they were all from CarMax. They weren't from other dealerships.
so they had been in CarMax and they were coming to Vegas to open that store.
Yeah, they were at other stores. So when I started, there was 30 locations nationwide, and now I think there's over 200 or something like that. But they all got transferred in. So
walk me through the like selling cars there, because you've sold cars now at a Toyota dealership, and we'll get to there eventually. But what do you feel like was really unique about the way that you were taught to sell cars at CarMax? Like, what's the CarMax way from 2002? I'm sure it's changed and things are different now, but in 2002, like, what was the approach that they took?
It just really just you meet and greet, you show them the never sell car. So there's a car that's inside the showroom that looks brand new, except there's a big picture right next to it that it shows how it was damaged at one point. So it'll be like it's got frame damage, right? Yeah. So you'd go into you'd introduce yourself, and you'd come in and tell them, hey, well, I'm going to tell you a little about us. And we do the little story, and you tell them, hey, price, quality, selection.
So you'd actually so right off the bat from your greeting, you're establishing the storyline of who CarMax is.
Yes. Got started by Circuit City. We're not traditional by no means. And then we talk about the never sell car, and we would say, hey, that we wouldn't sell you this car right here because it used to look like that. So there's like that shock factor, like, wow, these guys must be pretty honest and, respectable. I mean, they're never going to sell me this car. And almost every dealer in the country won't, unless it's like a mom and pop, note lot type, store. But once you did that,
so you were kind of painting like a straw man of like, we're never going to sell you this car, but everyone else is.
Yes.
So you're like setting that hook.
Oh yeah. So then once you got there, then you went to this a kiosk, and you kind of picked out which kind of car they're looking for.
So you used the kiosk to kind of like select the vehicles for them?
Did a little needs assessment, and you just went over. Okay.
Was the needs assessment like something written out, or did they just train you what to ask?
They asked you the 5 essential questions, or like 5 questions that you have to ask every customer. And what budget you have in mind, what color, features, benefit, all that kind of stuff. But then they gave you like a little book that you just filled it out.
So it was like a little notebook that had the 5 questions. Yeah, and you just write the answers to them. I love that.
What was cool about it, though, was when you picked the car, it told you exactly what slot that car was supposed to be.
So you could just go get it.
So you could just go walk to the customer, and then you didn't have a key machines because the lockbox was on the car.
With the old keys.
Yep. You would just unlock it, and you just open it. Or most dealers, even us today, I mean, it's on a pegboard or like in a key machine.
The drawer opens and the red light's there. There's no keys. And you're like, oh, who's got the keys? Oh, JC's got the keys. Where's JC? And you're like running around the lot. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting too, because I think that the not having that lot awareness, right? Like at CarMax, it sounds like that lot awareness was really provided by the technology. But I think at a lot of dealerships, not having that deep lot awareness means that salespeople end up walking a customer out and showing them way too many vehicles, and then inadvertently landing them on a vehicle that maybe they don't qualify for from a payment perspective, or maybe that's not really what they were looking for. And I think that probably stopped the development of bad habits early on in your career, because you were getting them on the right car from the very first moment.
Oh yeah. Well, it's but that technology back then, I mean, to be able to just go out there and find the car that you know exactly where it's at. I mean, how fast are you speeding up the sales process? Mm-hmm. I mean, even when the last store that, we were selling a bunch of cars, you'd have like 6 cars stacked deep. Mm-hmm. And then you find a car online, and then you don't know that it's in the back lot or the third lot.
Right.
Once you go over there to the third lot with the key, you got to move 5 other cars.
So you got to go get the other keys.
Or
for me, what happens, or I see happen a lot. I mean, it happened when I was working the desk a few years ago. Is salesperson helps a customer buy a car, and the customer wants to look at that car, and then they go into the key machine, and the key's been checked out, and TJ has the key, and now I got to find TJ, and TJ's on like a breakfast burrito run, and like now we're like, where's TJ? Okay, well, and then I have to like find the spare set, so I got to go like to wherever that dealership particularly happens to have the spare set inside the folder, and then now we're losing keys, and it's costing me
Or you lost the car because you got, Billy, who's down this, says his customer's coming and he's got it,
he's hoarding all the keys, right? Like, he's like 12 keys in each pocket. Like, I got all these cars I'm going to show my customer.
They're sold. Yeah,
right.
Sold.
It's so, I love the taking notes, right? So when I started selling cars on a traditional Toyota retail dealership, we had up cards, is what we called them. And it was like a triplicate copy. You write the customer's name, and then it had so I was habitually trained very early on to ask some key questions so that I could fill this out, which then would help me to land the customer on a car. And I think that a lot of times, especially like in digital world now, you miss this qualifying step with a customer. You miss this moment of like, okay, what's the customer really trying to do, right? And, I was doing a master class last week, and I was talking about an experience I had at a San Antonio dealer where I was making phone calls, and you see this one where, the customer's doing an inventory check on a web lead for a car that is in stock. It shows in stock. It's got pictures. It's a used truck. So they call, the BDC rep calls the used car manager. He's like, well, it's back in service. It'll be ready probably Monday. Call me on Monday. They just mark done on the task. Well, that doesn't kick a new task to them till Wednesday. I'm there on a Wednesday, right? So they respond to the customer, car's in service. It's getting all its make ready done. It'll be on the lot probably Monday. Wednesday, they get a task. Well, they call the used car manager on Wednesday. Oh, car sold. Okay, well, now they have to tell the customer the car sold. And customer, obviously, when that happens, is not happy.
Right? Oh, for sure.
Spitting fire. You guys are giving me the runaround.
Oh, it's the worst.
So then I jump in like a manager and make the phone call, and I call the customer, and it took 2 questions. First off, I'm sorry. Like, we screwed up here. And when we screw up, let's do what it takes to make that right. What are you trying to accomplish? Was it just this truck? And I was like, no. He's like, my son's 15 and a half. He's making good grades. He's playing baseball. I can't remember the school. He's like, everyone's like, oh, that's a really good baseball school. I told him if he made a 4-point this year, we'd buy him a nice truck when he turned 16. And the budget I set's $20,000, and that was a $20,000 one. Is one of the few he found for us. I'm at a Ford store that's connected owned by the same people to a Chevy store next door. They've got a Honda store and a Mercedes store. There's like 250 used trucks in inventory.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, there's like 80 to like $20,000 trucks out there. We could find one that would work great, but we missed that qualifying step. And it's pretty cool to hear that CarMax was just building that into the process. So now you land them on the car. You would take them out to the car.
Take them out of the car.
Did they teach you, because used car walkarounds are way different than a new car walkaround. Did they teach you how to do a presentation?
Oh, yeah,
what'd you start
for
doing?
sure. No, they a 5-point walkaround. It's basically what they called it. And so you would just make sure that you hit 5 points in that vehicle and open it up, butterfly it, and do the whole thing.
Yeah. And then you get them to demo drive it.
Get them in the demo drive right then, and that's it. You go on the demo drive, you stay quiet, let the car do the talking.
Yeah. And then when you get back, was there a place that customers parked? Was there a sold lane? Was there
sold lane?
Yeah.
And they actually had a little sold hang tag that you write their name and you put on the sold hang tag.
Did customers ever be like, whoa, I'm not ready to buy yet? Or did most of them just kind of move on?
They just moved on. Yeah.
Really?
You just assume the next step.
What's so interesting to me is what you're describing sounds like what we teach in the car business. It just doesn't sound like in the car business, a lot of places, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of places that we teach this, but it's not actually executed upon, right?
I think part of it is most dealers don't spend the time to train that much.
Yeah.
Like they might go over it in 3-4 days, but they're not spending a whole month making sure they understand it.
Do you feel like at CarMax, was there like continual training?
Continual training.
What did that look like?
Well, a lot of it was through KMX University, what they called it. They had the online virtual training. And then they had every now and then they'd have a trainer go out there every quarter, it seemed like, to just make sure that you had like some type of refresher. And it was continual. It was nonstop training.
Yeah.
For not only for salespeople, but sales managers, for every role.
So the car deal up to now sounds pretty normal. Like I would have worked that car deal. Like I feel like I can see myself in my head having done that hundreds thousands of times, right? Now's where it gets different, right? Because you come back and you're going to work a pencil with the customer.
Yeah. And it's super simple. Like their technology back then was light years ahead of what most dealers have today. and just the whole process, it's all connected, right? So like the minute you go on a test drive, it comes off their website. Like that's how fast it is.
Wow. So you're not getting angry customers.
Oh yeah,
that are calling and going. Oh,
the minute it's sold, like the second it's sold, it's off your website.
Wow.
Like it's really. I mean that was 08, 09, that technology.
Yeah. So walk me through the pencil now.
So
now
the pencil, you come back, you sit down, you start on the computer, you're filling out the credit application. You ask the customer a bunch of questions. They sign the agreement. You hit submit, and then you take them on a tour of your facility, kind of go over extended service plans and stuff, and then you come back. By the time you come back from that, hopefully all your lenders are back with their decisions, and they tell you exactly what your payment is. That's it. On the computer. Come back, same computer, and the salesperson goes over that with them.
So the salesperson's going over the service contract, the coverage
Everything,
options.
yeah.
Were you paid on those things, or was it just...
Yeah, you get a small commission, yeah.
So interesting. So there's no back and forth. There's
no back and forth. Yeah.
Did you ever like get up and have to go talk to a manager, or...
No, unless there was like a customer that had to have a lower rate, but manager would basically just tell them, hey, you know what? You've got other lenders that can do. I mean, we just exchange. You just come in with that check, and we just send that contract to them instead of to the bank we were trying to get you.
So you just send them to outside finance?
Yeah.
So wild. So how long were you at CarMax?
I was there for about 6 or 7 years.
So did you stay in sales the whole time?
No,
or did you
I actually got promoted relatively quickly. I ended up becoming a sales manager there.
What's the role of a sales? So when you hear sales manager in retail, you know this because you've been in retail so long, or you think of, and you hear people call it desk manager, which I hate that term, right? But what do you mean? You're managing? No, you're managing sales, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of a archetypal idea of what a sales manager is in retail. What is a sales manager at a CarMax? What's that role look like?
So it's very much your sales manager / F&I type manager, because you're looking through the lenders and making sure it gets approved. And back then you could actually rehash deals. Now it's basically gone to like, hey, you just submit the deal and whatever comes back is
because they're automating
deal.
A lot of that,
yeah,
right?
So they automated all of it.
So you're working with the lenders, and then what were you doing with the salespeople? Were you training at all, or
coaching, training, and it's just nonstop coaching. I mean, it's very, very behavioral based, making sure that you're looking at certain behaviors and making.
Was there any KPIs or metrics that you guys focused on? Or
yeah, they had a score report. They had KPIs for everything. Yeah. No, it was, and that's where the way they measured things. I mean, it's the reports that I have to build on a daily, right? Or where I had at CarMax years ago. I mean, I could just hit the print button and I had it at my fingertips.
Right, and now you have to it's an act of Congress to get the report the way you want it formatted.
Oh yeah.
To call.
And we're using Reynolds, so Reynolds is not the easiest to extract data.
Yeah, and I was a Reynolds guy pretty much the whole time. I went from Reynolds, and I was when we took over a store that I was the GM of. It was CDK, and we transitioned to Arcona through the buy sell. So, so I've got some experience with other ones. I'm a creature of habit, and it's like when they introduced Ignite, and I was so used to the blue screen, like just fly through the blue screen, and then it was like, oh, now I got to switch over to and use a mouse. Like I don't know how to. I feel like we become such creatures of habit in this business.
What's amazing is they've been talking about removing the blue screen for years, and guess what? We still use it.
You still use? Oh, yeah. That kind of makes me. I'm like Shift F3. Like
you know it all, right?
Yeah. So you're at CarMax. So you become a sales manager at CarMax. You spend, that 6 years there, right? So you went from 22-year-old, taking heat calls at an outsourced customer service, the call center, to selling cars at CarMax, to sales manager at CarMax. And then you transition from CarMax into traditional retail.
I did.
So tell me that story. Like first off, what happened?
So, you hear, I used to hear I used to talk to one of my buddies. His name was Carlos, and he would tell me, man, those guys across the street from us. And I'm looking across the street. I remember we'd walk the lot, and this was when I was because I ended up transferring to San Antonio.
Oh, cool.
And that was a whole other story, right? But so I go to I'm living in San Antonio. In 2005 is when I moved from Vegas to San Antonio, and I'm there, And one day we're just walking the lot, looking at the cars, and we're standing and we're looking directly across the street, and there's a Toyota store. And he's telling me, yeah, I heard these guys are making a killing over there. I mean, they make, basically the sales managers make, double what we make. And I was like, get out of here. I was like, no way. And he was like, yeah, no, it's real. And I was like, man, but do you really feel like you go over there and wouldn't you just feel dirty? Just, working deals and, negotiating and doing all that stuff. And so we kind of talked ourselves out of, thinking about that any further. And then,
so yeah, I could just in my head, I could see you walking along the fence line out there, walking the lot, looking like you're walking the lot, trying to learn where all the cars are, looking for ups. And you're oh, see those guys over there. Oh, they're killing it. We should do it. No, man. I mean,
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I think about that day and I think, man, and so I ended up going and I said, well, if the salesmen are making more than I'm making, I go back to selling cars. I'm good with that. And sure enough, I went back and, during the interview process, they're telling the girl, or not the girl, my internet director at the time. She's amazing, by the way. She really helped me out a lot. She was bringing in the different sales guys into the office and saying, "Hey, okay, well, come here," because it was just payday.
Yeah,
he had his paycheck in his hand. Hey, how much did you make? What's your year to date? She's calling all these guys out, and they're
and they're bragging.
They're all bragging.
Let me check this out right here.
Look,
yeah.
And they're showing me their year to date, and I'm just like, if these guys can do it, I can do it. You know what I'm saying? So, and sure enough, they hired me, and they said, all right, here's your login, and we'll get you some leads.
What was that first month like?
It was tough because initially I was trying to hold sticker. I guess that's just me from CarMax. Hey, this is what it is, and then I would ask a bunch of questions and a bunch of the guys, and I was trying to follow their process, right? Because their process was, you got to get the customer to say yes, and then package your deal, and then finance department, they take care of their side, and then that's it, right?
Yeah.
Then you're done. Well, the pay program I was on, you got paid percentage of the front and the percentage of the back.
Cool.
Well, I was just letting them do it. And then when I was looking at my check, I was like, man, I can't survive on making this kind of money if they're not going to sell anything. And I'm just getting another bunch of zeros. I know how to sell this stuff because I sold it at CarMax all the time.
So you start pitching F&I products as a sales?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get yelled at all?
No.
That's awesome.
Initially, they were like, well, and I go, just put it on the deal. Pencil it in. I'm good.
So you would have them put it on your deal when you take out a pencil?
Oh, yeah. Every time.
I love that.
Every time. And sure enough, I just put my own process. It was a process similar to what I learned at CarMax, but then I was getting some of the good things they had. Mm-hmm. And then I just developed my own process. And sure enough, I started selling a lot of cars and making double, triple what I was making at.
I have these moments, right? I remember, so my first month in the business, I was really young. Didn't know any better. I sold a lot of cars, mainly because I was scared of my manager. So anything he told me to do, I did. Like Jerry said, you go punch that lady in the face. I would have punched her in the face. I was terrified of my manager. So I just did what he said. And I got my first check and I had this panic attack. So, I get this is back in the day, right? This is the 90s. So I got a $500 draw and I got my washout on the 5th. So you get a $500 on the 15th and then you get your washout on the 5th. And I got that washout check and I go into the office. I'm like, Jerry, I think there's been a mistake, right? I think I got someone else's check. He's like, what's wrong with it? So slide it over the top of the tower to him. He's like, what's the matter? You missing a deal? I was like, no, it's got all my deals. I was like, that's a lot. Is there an accounting error? He's like, no, kid, here's your money. Throws it at me. Right. And I was like, I have so much money.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that feeling of wow, I didn't realize
the euphoria you got on that, right? It
was it's and I think that it's part of what keeps some of us in this, right? It's this, and euphoria is a good word for it. It's this moment where you're it's freedom and it's my skills turning into something. It's all these things rolled into one, man.
I remember the first time that I broke 30 cars in a month, and it was, I had a really good sales manager that helped me out. I mean, if that guy wasn't there, I don't know that I could have been as successful as I was.
I think that is and I hate to cut you off. I think that is a part of this business that we don't celebrate enough.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like I think of the things that, Tony Bunn and Jerry Hoyt and, these people taught me that like took me under, like once they saw that I had some grit and I was going to bite down on my mouthpiece and run out there and swing and I was going to hustle and give them what I had, that like, I don't think that we celebrate the impact that a dealership sales manager can make on a young person's life or an old person's life and the trajectory of their career and future.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I wanted to start this podcast, right? Like, tell me about your manager.
So it was my sales manager, my internet director. She was amazing. Without her, and then the general manager at the time, who ended up later now is my partner, great guy, saw something in me that, was good and brought me with him. And without them, I wouldn't have been where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Basically. But I mean, my sales manager, his name was Ty, and he was good. I mean, you ever saw someone with the gift of gab?
Yeah.
This guy is the guy, right? Like this guy he had every car saying in the world
just down.
Like it was just, he knew it, right?
Yeah.
And he could spit the lingo. I mean, he was good. And when I was struggling with the customer and I was like, man, you know what? I'm too nice. I've turned into the friend and I need the guy to help me,
shut the deal.
Just close it. But like, they've got to like raise it up a little bit because right now I'm too nice right now. I need to be a little bit more, but clear. I don't know how to explain it, but so he'd go in there.
There's actually a whole book written on it. It's called Radical Candor.
Yeah.
And it's about like being direct. And I do the same thing, right? Like there's a lot of times where I'm candy coating it and I'm being gentle and nice and it's just not getting the point across.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so he would go in there and he'd close it. And then so I learned a lot from listening to him. And then we had another closer that would go in there and I learned from him. And we had a talent pool at that store because their pay plan was pretty amazing. And they were all like ex-sales managers, ex-general sales managers, and they were all on the sales floor.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot from every one of those guys, even though they probably don't even know it. But, I just learned. And there was some young guys there that, there's this one guy that I learned a lot from. He's the one that first introduced me to Grant Cardone, and I didn't even know who he was at the time. But I was like, man, I'm looking for material. I need to learn something how to overcome some of these objections that I'm running into. And so he introduced me to him, and this was a young guy, all the talent in the world, but just was lazy. He didn't want. He was like selling 12 cars a month, and he was okay with that because he was like 23 years old, and I'm 28, 29 at the time, I think. And I'm just like, man, this guy is so talented. He can go in there. He knows how to talk to the customer. Very charismatic.
If he could just get organized and just follow up in line and like,
there would be times I'd have like 3 customers. I'm like, man, I got 3 appointments here right now. I need you to help me out. And he's like, man, I'm about to leave. I got to go home. And I was just like,
it's half a car deal. Just hang out with him for 45 minutes. Just babysit him and get him into F&I. Come on, bro.
It's a deal. Come on. And he's like, and he wouldn't really think about it. But it's funny. He ended up growing up and having kids, and he ended up, crushing any of my records, I think.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
He ended up doing real well.
It's you mentioned Grant Cardone. So for me, I was lucky because our dealership, we had like a library of training. So there was it wasn't well organized. Like it was a disaster. There was all these like big binders with CDs in them, and I would take them home and I would just listen to them in the car. So I remember like listening to Joe Verde and listening to Grant Cardone and like working these word tracks, trying them out and failing miserably and be like, oh, that didn't work at all. I'll try. I got to figure out how to do that one better. And like, I can remember like the Joe Verde one, like give the customer, if they're going to lunch, give them $5 and ask them to pick you up something. And like after my like 3rd customer not coming back with my $5, like this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. And yeah, like I think that like that's this piece of this that I love, right? Like I love, that hustle and that desire, and combined with, you're very like blessed and lucky to have found yourself in a situation where you had leaders and people that were good at it that would share that knowledge. And I think a lot of that knowledge here is inadvertent, right? Like they're working a car deal, they need your help on something, you help out with it, then you get to hear what they're saying when they're talking to that customer, like, oh, that's a good one, I'm going to use that, right? Yeah. And you like start picking those things up. So you're there, you're rocking and rolling. Where does it go from there?
So from there, I'm selling a lot of cars, and my boss or the general manager says, you know what? I literally just my best month in the car business. I sell 36 and a half cars. Oh. He pulls me in, and my biggest paycheck ever in the car business at the time. And I'm thinking,
for those of you listening that don't know what 36 cars is, that is a heck of a month. Like that is, there's a lot of dealerships that if they have somebody that hits the 30, like 31 to 35 to above 30, there's a lot of stores that don't have anybody that sells that many units, right? Yeah. That's a great month.
And so I'm looking at my paycheck. I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna be in the car business forever. At that point, I was thinking, man, maybe at 40, maybe I need to start getting an assistant because I was already thinking I'm gonna get to 60 and 80. I was thinking I could sell a lot of cars, right? Yeah. Well, then he pulls me in his office and he's like, you know what? I just became a buying partner at a Toyota dealership in Austin, Texas, and I want you to come with me. And I'm just like, man, that's in Austin, Texas. I was like, man, I actually wanted to move to Austin. Yeah. But, San Antonio came up first, and I ended up moving to San Antonio. And so I said, well, give me one day to talk to my wife, okay? And so I talked to my wife, and I'm telling her, look, this is what's going to happen. One, I made way too much money, and the next general manager that comes in,
going to whack my pay plan.
He's going to be like, why is this salesman making more than my managers, right? Mm-hmm. Like substantially more, right? And sure enough, when I ended up leaving, I heard all the sales guys, they ended up losing like half the staff because he ended up cutting all their pay plans. And it wasn't that GM, it was the next GM
next one. Yeah.
So, but they seem to rotate.
It's incredible to me to see. I saw there was a store in Oklahoma City that was selling 1,000 cars a month, right? And they sold. And the new company came in, and within, I think it was 6 months, they're selling, 150 cars. Wow. Like you see this where people take over something that's incredible. And instead of like recognizing that it's incredible and trying to like,
tweak it, little tweak.
They're like, oh, we're going to change everything. And then it goes from incredible to zero. And
it's all about the people. And that's what they forget. I mean, there's a lot of ownership out there that forget the people. It's the most important thing. I mean,
it's I was talking to a friend of mine that's a dealer the other day, and he's expanding and growing. And one of the things that he was talking about is how when you look at the groups, some of the groups that are some of the biggest, most like you think Berkshire Hathaway Automotive, that was Van Tile. Larry Van Tile made people partners.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like it was about like one of his great gifts in life was recognizing talent and rewarding it and hooking it into their organization where that talent will never leave. And then what that did was inspired lots of other talent to come join the cause.
Oh, and,
yeah. I think there's something really to that.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of great things about his organization when he was running it before it became Berkshire.
Yeah.
And then I've heard a lot of, tough situations too, because they paid you all the money, but they were also,
you're going to work hard.
You're going to work hard.
You're going to work real hard. And it's without like placing a judgment call on the culture, right? Like it's still ingrained in the DNA, and there's people that love that and respond to that. And that's what they want and what they need. And they are looking for the mountain to climb, and they're going to like claw, tooth, and nail up that mountain. And like, good for them, right? And I think that part of that culture came from, there was a mountaintop, and the mountaintop was having your picture painted and hanging up at the like headquarters where you're a partner in Van Tile. And there's a part of me that goes, good, bad, and different, like whatever the judgment would be on like what that means. Like they built a model that
for sure is super successful. And the guy, he ended up selling it for a couple $2 billion to Berkshire, and I mean he did real well.
Yeah. So you follow your GM to Austin.
He became a buying partner, and I walk into that store that one first day, and I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the traffic, and I'm like, these guys are selling how much? Mm-hmm. And they've got this much traffic.
How many were they selling?
They're selling about 150 cars a month, 100 new and like 50 used. And I was like, wow, it's pretty incredible that they're only selling that much. I mean, they had like 8 salespeople at the time, And I just went to work. I put my head down. We started putting all the little pieces in place. And first month we were there, we ended up selling like 220 cars. The second month we sold over 300 cars.
2 months you doubled business.
Yeah. And I mean, we're just, hey, I need people. Let's start getting more people in. And it was nonstop after that. I mean, we did real well.
So do you feel like your 6 years or 8 years, whatever it was, of steeping in the CarMax culture gave you something that you were applying to the what we call like a traditional retail model?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of it is just the process pieces of it, making sure that we had all the processes in place so that you can scale, right? Because you got to have your BDC department. You've got to make sure you got all your marketing strategy, your whole playbook, right? Like where are you going to put your money to maximize your dollars? And just once we put all that in, we just got to make sure we have the right people. I mean, it was all the people that we put together.
And then were you trained? Like, did you create a training curriculum?
We created an onboarding system. We created a training system for everybody, what that looked like, make sure that they went through the training. Every day we had training at 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning. We had managers training, walks every day, making sure that they know where all the inventory is at. And just real repetitive, real regimen, having meetings, huddles every couple hours, making sure, hey, where are we at? How many calls we've got? Making sure that people are making calls. And
so just saying, like, hyper focused on the fundamentals.
Just the fundamentals, man.
And man, like, why is that so hard? Like, when I think about our business and the great mentors and people that you and I have access to talk to, right? Like, I get to talk to great thinkers, people that have these incredible careers in auto. And how many times I hear them just reminding me that it's getting really, really good at the fundamentals and then not losing focus on those fundamentals.
Well, the problem is there are a lot of people that are real good sprinters, right? They'll do you'll tell them, hey, just stick to this and just keep going, right? And so they'll do it for like a month, maybe 2 weeks. And then they're like, man, they peter out. They
just veer right back to homeostasis.
Yeah, just let's watch the game. Let's look at what's going on Facebook. Yeah. Let's see what's happening, right? Instead of, hey, I've got to do this every day.
Yep.
Every day the exact same way. And they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, man.
It's like going to the gym.
Yeah. We were talking about this the other day when we were getting coffee, right? I've lost 140 pounds and that's a human, right? Like I've showed you pictures of me, like when I'm desking car deals, and I was that like fat guy, like eating pizza. And man, like I have this tremendous amount of empathy for how hard that is, right? Like it took a ton of work, but it wasn't like I could just go kill it for 2 weeks and change. It was creating repetitive behaviors and patterns that I consistently stuck to for a long period of time. And what happens, and I think it happens to salespeople too, is you implement this set of processes and systems, and it's uncomfortable. You're making a lot of phone calls, and you're saying stuff that doesn't feel natural yet. And you're
because a lot of it, they think it's micromanaging, but it's just no. You got the routine. This is what it's going to be, and we just stay disciplined on doing it every day.
Yeah, and I think what happens too is they get that 2 weeks in. And we start this new routine on, November 1st, and November 10th, they've got 4 out.
Yeah.
And they don't see the fruits of it yet. And so they just go back to I'm not doing all this work and I'm not getting anything extra. And had they kept up doing it on the 11th, 12th, 13th, they had 10 car deals they would have hit. Oh yeah. Right. Like it's like and I see it.
And they'd rather go and wait on point. Or wait in line to get an up.
Yeah.
Instead of just keep hammering the phones or work your service drive or, do a little bit of everything. You can't just sit on the point waiting for something to happen.
We had Chris Mathern on here last week, who's the guy that's on the State Farm recruitment videos. He's like one of the fastest growing State Farm agents in the country, President's Circle, like dude's a hitter. I hired him out of college to sell cars at a career fair, and he avoided me like the plague. Like, would not make eye contact, didn't want to come to my booth. And I was like, dude, just come visit our dealership. Just come see and see if I'm full of it. Like, just come visit.
What I listened to that podcast, and I was like, man, that's amazing that you had you guys had a job fair.
Oh, yeah.
Most dealers don't do that.
Yeah, we were very focused on recruiting. And one of the things that, we talked about on that podcast was how much I used to harp on him to work the service drive. As a sales manager, if we were slow, I would go take ups in the service drive and flip them to salespeople just to try and prove to everybody how fertile of a soil that is to generate business out of.
Oh, all day. I mean, that, when I was on the floor at that Toyota store, I would sell, 5-6 cars a month just out of service. Just going in there, just having a conversation. It starts off as a conversation. Cup of coffee. That's it,
So you're at this store. You guys are transforming this, and it's going rapidly. Like, how did you because this is the store you took from 150 units to 1,000
cars,
right?
Yeah.
So walk me through that journey, right? So up front, you get really focused on executing the fundamentals consistently all day, every day, right? It's not rocket science. It's not some newfangled gadget or widget. Or it's literally, we are going to block and tackle. We're going to do it really, really well. And we're going to focus on it all day, every day. And you see that month 1 increase, month 2 doubles, right? Walk me through the trajectory of that up to 1,000.
So we got 600 was like the first benchmark that we hit. That was one of the first ones that we hit pretty quick. So we got to 600 cars, and it was like, that's when things start, is this area as tight as we thought it was? Was our accounting ready for this type of volume? And it was really like, you saw a lot of massive, just, hey, this, like, Mayday, there's something broken on this step right here. Let's
Our
figure this
CIT's
out.
getting out of control, right?
CITs are a little out of control. And once you start refining those things, and luckily we ended up putting in some different pay plans and stuff to manage that type of bad behavior. I mean, we were able to jump to the next level. But at every level, you're going to have to refine your processes and then start growing to the next step. And it takes getting more inventory, increasing a little bit of your marketing.
People's job shift, right? Like what they
job
do.
shift. They start taking on more than what they were doing before, and
then you have to offload some of that, and then they get uncomfortable because they're giving up something that they feel like is important to them.
Oh yeah, so it's a little bit of everything, but you got to make sure that at every level you're refining it and then going to the next step.
Yeah, it's having been a retail car person for the majority of my working career. My majority of working life is in a dealership, and now I've been at a San Francisco startup for 4 years, right? It's in auto, but it is a Silicon Valley technology company founded by someone out of GoDaddy and eBay and PayPal and Lending Club. And, it's this very tech company. The challenges you're talking about are the same scaling challenges that we face in Silicon Valley, right? It's this idea of that going from 0 to 50 dealers is a lot different than going from 50 to 500, which is a lot different from going 500 to 5,000, right? And, and each of that, you start to recognize, okay, there's these pieces over here that worked when you had 50 dealers, right? That's no big deal. I can be the person that handles every tech, support request, and I can account manage 50 dealers. And on top of that, I can, also handle all the implementation and onboarding of those 50 dealers. And now, okay, we've got to figure out how to do that for the next 500. I can't do it all, right? You hit these points where people, you start even becoming more systematic, because without it, you can't do it.
Oh yeah.
So what do you feel like were as you hit that 600 point, right? What were the biggest challenges for a dealer that's out there that's listening, that's like, okay, I think with our traffic, with what we can do, if I put the right system in process, we can get here fast.
Well, my whole goal was to make the salesperson's job easier. Mm-hmm. So I try to give them as many tools as they can get. I try to streamline that transition from desk manager to finance manager to cut that time down shorter. Yeah. And part of it was making sure the desk guys are submitting their deals, and then the finance guy only improves the deal, versus some of the current models are desk manager says, hey, yes, we're not haggling on price, and then they send it to the finance, then they submit it, and that takes another 30, 40 minutes, and I'm trying to shorten that window. Yeah. And then for the finance guy, making sure that they're set up for e-contracting 100% of the time. Yep. Shouldn't be doing any paper contracts. Every now and then that happens, but the faster you can get to 100% e-contracting. And then your CITs, making sure that you're watching them at, the earlier the better. Instead of waiting till 10 days, you're looking at it at 4 days. I'm trying to see, hey, why isn't this thing funded yet? So,
yeah, I think that what you're talking about too, for me, resonates with this idea. And, I'm the guest instructor at the Dealer Academy for NADA and on digital retail. And one of the things that I think we're all thinking about right now is, over time, in the last few months are an anomaly, right? But over the last decade, the trend for net profitability has continued to decline, right? Our net to sales percentage that we all, if you're a GM, get measured by, has continued to decline over time. And a lot of that's related to variable ops, right? Service is still super profitable. Parts is still super profitable. Body shop, it can be super profitable. But when you look at new car sales, used car sales, and finance, front-end margin has gotten so compressed. We're super dependent on F&I income. And the net profitability game is really, for most dealers, hinges on the profitability or lack of profitability of their variable ops department. And one of the things that I think is this really interesting metric that I would like to see more people in the dealership world thinking about, because I want feedback on it, is the units per salesperson. Because if you can drive up the units per salesperson, you can actually increase your net profitability significantly. Where, our traditional thing is, well, we want to get to 600 cars. Well, at 8 per person, I need, 78 people to sell to that 600 units. And what you see with dealers that do it really well and really profitably is that it's not just about flooding the floor. It's about being really focused on maximizing the results that they can get from the tightest operational team that they can have. Did you guys see any of that? Was it walk me through that?
Well, we would say, I had probably 1,000 cars. We had probably 75 salespeople. So, that ratio was pretty good. But the more tools you give to amplify the guys and girls on the team, the better they're going to be, because then they can sell more. It used to be where managers would hide rebates and, not educated the sales, not educate them, and, not knowing how to build the deal. The manager had to build it if it was a dealer locate. And the more tools you can give your sales staff to empower them, then you won't need as many salespeople. And the goal is not to flood the floor, right? The goal is to try to get your team better. But at the same time, if you don't have performance indicators, you need to know when to, because you can have someone that's underperforming for years if you're not holding people accountable.
Yeah. And you see that a lot, right? And, it's to me, this is super interesting, because I think that there's so many analogies between what your experience was there and then what I've experienced growing a super rapid growth technology company. And I think it's a lot of the same challenges, and a lot of it all relates back to people and process and product. And I think that the kind of umbrella for all of that's the culture of the place. That develops over time. And it feels like in your story, you guys were an injection of that, culture that kind of jump started the whole set of processes. What do you feel like from day, 150 units to 1,000 units? What was if I was to walk into that dealership when it was 150 units and I was walking into that dealership in 1,000 units, I believe dealerships are living entities, right? You can feel the walls breathe.
Yeah.
If I walked in at 150 and I walked in at 1,000 as Joe walking in that dealership, what would it feel like? What would the difference in feel for those two be?
I think the
me?
first day you would have felt uncomfortable, because it just wasn't. It was cool. They had some really good people, but it wasn't like when you walked in at 1,000. Now they sold 1,008 cars last month.
Wow.
Same store, and they're doing real good. Great, they got a bunch of great people. And actually, the guy that was my sales manager in San Antonio, he's now their assistant general manager.
Oh,
now.
super
So
cool.
He's a good guy, and they're doing real good. And you just the atmosphere when you're in 1,000 car store, everybody's just having fun. The music's loud. They got the big gong, and it's
I get goosebumps. We never sold 1,000 stores at the car, 1,000 cars at the store I was at. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we had lots of Saturdays where we did 50 plus units, and it was just there was a crackle of energy.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like you could just feel it when customers could feel it, and they'd be laughing and having fun, and I get very nostalgic for retail. Like I don't on Saturdays when I'm sleeping in, right? But those are the moments that I think about where it's the like goosebumps of, man, it's just so much fun. Like it's,
well, that's when I left in 2018 to go onto the software thing.
Yeah.
And
you wrote a book,
wrote a couple books, and
on how to sell 1,000 books. By the way, check out his book. It's available where all books are available. You got to check it out.
And what's cool is, so I did the whole thing, and I was doing the whole software, selling to dealers, and I just kept thinking, man, I had a lot of fun in the car dealership. This is completely different, right? And I had an opportunity. We ended up finding the right person to run the company. Mm-hmm. He's been doing real well, and my last store that I was at, he's still a good partner of mine, and we're partners in the software. I had an opportunity out here in Tulsa and met Joe Cooper and Greg Keck. Both owners are great people, and they made me an offer, and I came out here to help them run.
Yeah, so tell me about this. So you're in Tulsa. Your store is literally, for those of you at home, like his store is, if I could throw a baseball and I can't throw a baseball, I could get it out of my backyard and hit a car in his showroom, right?
Yeah.
Like right by my house. And tell me about, so you ended up with a group. I've known a lot of people there for a long time. Walk me through where you're at now, right? I mean, you're back in retail.
15 months ago, I started with them. And when I got here, I looked at their numbers, and they were averaging 400, a little over 400. I forget exactly the numbers. But our best month so far, we've done 585 cars. Wow. And we've been averaging about 550 cars a month.
Yeah.
And we've done pretty well in the last 15 months. Sales are, real good, net profit's real good. And it's just getting back to the basics. It's just putting in a couple processes here, a couple tweaks here. They already had a great culture, great family oriented business. Greg, the main, or the dealer principal at the Tulsa stores, he's got his daughter, his son working there, and they're doing real well. And it just feeling that family community type thing. It's actually really cool, man.
Dude, and like that's I am a like passionate advocate for this industry, right? I grew up in dealerships, right? My mom was a service writer, my dad was a finance manager, became a GM, and my whole life I've been in dealerships. And the dealership I came out of was a family-owned dealership, and the owner's kids were involved, and the people that were in that store, we felt like family, right? Like I still talk to not just the people that work there, but like our reps from other companies. We're still all friends, right? Like we all hang out. And to me, I don't think we celebrate that enough. Like as an industry, I think we do a bad job of one, highlighting the path that a 22-year-old who's taken inbound phone calls of people yelling at him, right, takes a chance and shows up to an interview at CarMax thinking it's like lip balm because his brother tells him about it. And here it is 20 years later, and you look at the trajectory of your life. You've written a book, right? You've started a software company. You've done these things, and we don't celebrate that path, and we don't celebrate what these dealerships mean to their communities. I can remember playing high school football, and the like end zone like countdown clocks had a dealership logo on them, right? Like there's this relationship that's symbiotic, and even the big publics. I do a lot of work with big public groups, and in their local communities, everybody that works there lives there, and they, and I just think that it's cool to hear your story of starting at CarMax, going to walking the lot and making the decision to go across the street and apply, selling 36 cars a month, leaving there and like following your GM to go take over a store doing 150, getting to 1,000, leaving that to take a risk and an entrepreneurial journey. Like it's one of the things that I love. Like, bro, if we're going to talk about what I love about this business or what it's like calls to my spirit, it's how entrepreneurial you've got to be, right? Like,
oh yeah,
from the moment you start selling cars until where we both are right now, you got to like bet on yourself, right?
You do.
And like, I love that about it. And I just think that if there's anything I'm trying to do with this podcast, right? If there's anything that I want to get out there in the universe. It's that. And I hope that some 22-year-old or some 62-year-old working in a dealership today listens to this and goes, you know what? If Chris Martinez can do it, I can do it. If Joe St. John can do it, I can do it. And that's what this is about. So
I mean, that's basically what I heard when I was like, man, if they can do it,
yeah,
I can do it.
Yeah, man. I think we're gonna end on that. It has been insanely fun for me having you on here. I have enjoyed this as if like if this podcast wasn't here, we were just doing this. Like this has been super awesome. So I want to thank you so much for joining.
Matt, thank you for having me,
man. As this continues to go, I'll hopefully I can bring you back in the future at some point, and we'll keep talking. And best of luck at Jackie Cooper Automotive. They are they're lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have them. So I'm glad to have you, man. Thanks a ton, dude.
Thank you.
Later. This episode of The Lot is brought to you by AutoFi. AutoFi is an e-commerce software platform that allows car buyers, for the first time, to purchase and finance a car entirely online. AutoFi's platform connects an auto dealer's customers to a network of lenders, providing a fast, mobile-first checkout experience. To schedule a demo, go to autofi.com. You've been listening to The Lot. Real stories of real people who took real ups. Join us as we continue the adventure on The Lot.